I've been trying to pinpoint what Kamu's blind spot in this game was going to be, and I think it's going to be his ego. Let's get into everything that happened overnight on the BB28 live feeds. If you don't want any spoilers, now would be a good time to scroll. So, as I've mentioned multiple times yesterday was Angela's birthday. Last night, the house guests celebrated with party hats, cake, and a variety show. I think it was fun to watch. Some people thought it was kind of boring. They each tried to do a little bit of a talent or a skit or a song or something. It was a silly, goofy time. Lala did an incredible headstand, but if you ask Haley, it was not by definition a headstand. Haley herself didn't attempt to do one though, but apparently she's an expert. So Haley, however, pitched bags. So that was not so fun to watch. As far as the game goes, Kamu did try and pitch to Mallory why she should keep him. He basically was just trying to say that the vets have consistently been lying to him throughout the game to try and earn his trust, but now he's figured out what their game is, and that's going to be who he is targeting moving forward. Mallory, of course, despises Kamu, so she really doesn't care what he has to say, and she immediately took this information literally within the hour back to Angela and let her know everything that Kamu had said about her and the other icons. Most of his conversation was centered around Devins and Dee, but still he kept saying icons, which would include all three of them. Angela and Haley have a conversation, and Haley was really trying to convince Angela to work with herself, Yash, and Taylor rather than working with Devins and Dee. I can see a world where this happens because Angela does genuinely like Haley. However, Angela does not like Taylor, and Angela thinks that Taylor is a huge threat, and she would know that she's coming into the bottom of this situation. So it's a bit of a hard sell, and I just certain things would have to fall into place for Angela to actually jump ship from Devins and Dee to join this group, because she has a lot of reservations about several people in it. Kamu also had a conversation with Drew last night, basically just talking about how he thinks he has the votes. He even mentioned at one point that he is considering or he would want to maybe throw the blockbuster and stay on the block just to prove to Devins that it's going to take more than a diamond power veto to get him out of the game. Drew basically tells him, you don't have the votes to stay against Angela for sure. You might have a slim chance against Haley, but overall, you're kind of screwed if you don't win that blockbuster. So we'll see if Kamu ends up changing his mind, but I wouldn't really hold my breath. But I also don't really see him actually going in and throwing the blockbuster, even if it is just to try and prove a point. Kamu also tells Drew that he thinks that everything that happened yesterday was actually good because it flushed out all of the powers. Kamu was under the impression that Dee used her bribe in order for Devins to use the diamond power veto on her. And that was an idea that Dee and Devins had tossed around together, but ultimately Dee wouldn't do it. She would not use the bribe. I think Devins was kind of disappointed about that. Devins's mood was really low last night after the whole veto ceremony thing. He played bags and different things like that, but he just didn't have as much energy and pep in his step as he has these past several weeks. And I do think he's almost maybe kind of starting to question how much he's put in the game towards Dee and if he's going to get that same in return, because she would not use that bribe. She did promise him that they will find some way for the bribe to be beneficial for him and his game or him and his family. But she basically said, I don't want us to use both of our powers on this same day when we may need it sometime next week. I am very 50-50 on this decision by Dee. I think that Yash I know in the episode it showed like that Yash was considering taking this bribe. We didn't actually get to see their conversation on feeds, but from the retells from both Yash and Dee, it really didn't sound like he took much consideration into taking that money. However, I do think that there are some other people that would maybe take that $5,000. Maybe even if it's not for a nomination scenario, maybe if it is just, hey, vote in my favor, they may be willing to do it. I don't know. I do understand Dee's point of like, let's not burn these all in one go when, we can kind of keep this one in our back pocket if we may see some use of it in the future. But I do also think that it has caused Devons to kind of question how equal they are in protecting and aligning with each other. So we'll have to kind of see how that relationship continues to play out over this next part of the week. Honestly, that's really all that happened last night. I was really hoping they would get an alcohol delivery for Angela's birthday last night. They've only had one alcohol delivery so far this season, and Friday is the halfway point in the game. I feel like some alcohol could maybe liven some of these people up, but this also is a cast full of people that don't drink, so maybe I am wrong. Like I said in my update last night, today is the start of an indoor lockdown, so I'm kind of hoping things escalate a little bit, but my hopes are also very low after there was not much excitement yesterday. Mallory has been putting in the work today. Let's dive into all of it. So early this morning, Kamu had a conversation with Mallory up in the head of household room and basically was just trying to like solidify something with her, kept just kind of reiterating some of the conversations that they've already had throughout this week. Says that he's not coming after her. He only wants to go after the icons, especially after the events of yesterday. Really saying that like all the competitors, meaning him, Mallory, and Yash, really need to stick together to make sure that they are all secure in the game. Kamu also told Mallory about Dee's power. If you watched my updates yesterday, Mallory is someone that had not been informed about the power, even though Dee has told several people, including some of Mallory's allies, about her power and how she tried to use it. But Kamu did tell her about the power, what it is, and that she tried to bribe Yash to not be nominated this week. So Kamu gives Yash the rundown before he enters the head of household room, and then Yash goes in and him and Mallory start talking. Now, at the beginning of the conversation, Mallory was seeming really agreeable with Yash, and I was getting kind of nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, is this like conversation with Kamu, revealing Dee's power, all of these things, is this working on Mallory? But then Mallory started making her points that her and Melody discussed yesterday as being reasons that they need to get Kamu out. Number one, this is an opportunity for them to get him out and no one from their side gets any blood on their hands. It's kind of like handing them this opportunity on a silver platter. She also talked about how they don't need a strong competitor to be on their side, especially someone that not the whole group trusts, including herself. She was very open and honest with Yash in this conversation. She also talked about how, yes, he's a good competitor, but we can beat the icons. They haven't been winning much, and we've been performing better than them in most competitions. And if he does get out the icons, who does he go after next? Also in this scenario, it would potentially mean that Haley had won the blockbuster, so that would mean that Haley and Kamu are in the house together, which Mallory said makes her very nervous because they have obviously worked closely together throughout the entirety of this game, and it would be very easy for them to team up back together. They're both strong competitors, and they can kind of just trade off comp wins and just comp out the rest of the season. So all very good points. They all seem to kind of land on Yash, and then Mallory went and got Melody up in the room, and they started talking, and it just seemed like Yash just started over from scratch, but Mallory kept hitting those same points. Another thing to make note of is while Yash and Mallory were talking alone and Yash brought up Dee's power, he said that Dee tried to bribe him to specifically nominate Mallory and Melody. Now, we again did not see that conversation between Dee and Yash on the feeds. However, we did see over the weekend a conversation between Taylor and Yash where they devised this plan to tell Mallory and Melody that Dee tried to do this, even though it is not true, but they're hoping that that will keep them on their side. If Yash says, she tried to bribe me $5,000 to nominate you, and I turned down that money in order to keep you safe. So he did tell that to Mallory. I don't remember if he was able to repeat that. I think he was whenever Melody came in the room as well. But basically, Mallory just kept hitting the same points, and a lot of the other people in the room were agreeing with her. First, it was Melody, and then Barrett also joined as well. So Mallory is doing a good job making her points as to why Kamu needs to leave. Where I'm a little bit concerned is she does also continue to say that she is going to respect Yash's HOH and do whatever he wants. Now, this is something that her and Melody discussed saying, and then at the last minute deciding to switch. I think it would just be better to not even say that part right now. Just make your points and your arguments about why you think Kamu should leave, and leave it at that. Other things that have happened today to make note of is Thog has told both Taylor and Kamu that she absolutely does not want to make jury. She wants to be able to go home before jury starts because she knows she's not going to be able to win, and she does not want to sit in the jury house. She said that her anxiety cannot handle being locked inside of another house. Just a little bit ago, we had Hot Dog Gate. Devins was making lunch, and he made himself 2 hot dogs and some mac and cheese, but then got called to the diary room. So they were left sitting there, and Yash and Drew kind of like peer pressured Barrett into going and taking a bite of his hot dog. When Devins came out, he seemed kind of upset about the hot dog, not like super upset, but they assumed he was upset. It kind of turned into this big joke where Drew, Melody, Barrett, and Yash went downstairs and said Devins had to guess who had taken a bite of the hot dog, and if he guessed incorrectly, he would never find out who had taken the bite. He guessed Yash, and he also went over points of like reasons, pros and cons of choosing each person in the line. Obviously, since he chose Yash, they did not tell him who it was, but then later whenever they came up and told Taylor and Kamu about it, and then they went back downstairs to make Devins a replacement hot dog, Taylor and Kamu were talking about how of course Devins wouldn't choose Barrett because he trusts him so much, and Barrett is just too likable of a guy, and blah 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 blah. And they were basically like, this is why we need to get Barrett out of the house. So Hot Dog Gate could potentially be another reason why Barrett may see the block here pretty soon and be a target rather than a pawn. Kamu or Angela? That is the biggest question of today, and honestly I think it may set us up for a pretty decent Waffle Wednesday tomorrow. Let's get into it. So in my last update, I talked a lot about the conversations that Mallory was having throughout the house today with several different people, mostly with Yash, but she had also talked with Lala. Angela actually came into the storage room whenever Mallory was having a conversation with Lala, and Angela didn't know exactly what the conversation was, but could tell it was a campaign of sorts. It was Mallory campaigning for Angela to stay over Kamu, but Angela walking in on this has caused her to kind of start to spiral. However, Mallory was able to kind of clear it up with her and let her know that obviously people like Yash, Lala, and Taylor are pushing for Kamu to stay because they want to target the icons, but Mallory let Angela know that her, Melody, Drew, and Barrett are really pushing hard against it, and no matter what, they are going to be voting in her favor on Thursday if she doesn't win Blockbuster. However, shortly after that, Melody and Mallory had a conversation in the storage room, and Melody really seems to be questioning everything. They both agree that there is a high likelihood, and that they are pretty positive at this point, that Drew and Barrett are heavily aligned with the icons, and that this new alliance they formed, the Mosh Pit, means that they would then be at the very, very bottom of that alliance. They talked together about how, the icons would definitely choose Drew and Barrett in a situation over them, but if they stick with the Yash and Taylor side of the house, that side of the house would choose Mallory and Melody over Drew and Barrett. So they definitely have found themselves completely smack dab in the middle of the house, which makes this week a little bit tough for them. But Mallory is still really pushing, even with Melody, that Kamu has got to go this week if he is on the block for the vote. So Mallory is still holding strong. Melody, even since this conversation, has really just been up in the HOH room with Yash, with Drew, with Kamu, Taylor, Lala. This week is going to be a very interesting dynamic for that friendship specifically, because Mallory has let her know that even though she does not fully trust the icons and she no longer fully trusts Drew and Barrett, she thinks that the best move for their game this week is getting Kamu out. And then if they come into power next week, or even if they're not in power, if the icons are on the block, they turn against them. She said she was never planning to stick with the mosh pit until Final 7, but for this week, it's what's best for their game. A bit ago, Lala and Angela were in the bathroom and they were having a chat, and Lala started asking a lot of pointed game-related questions to Angela, and Taylor was also cleaning in the little hot tub room and the hallway towards the bathroom. So Taylor definitely overheard a lot of this, and she even at one point told Angela, like, you don't have to answer any of Lala's questions. Taylor and Lala kind of got into a little tiff afterwards, and Taylor was like, why would you basically interrogate her like that? Like, that's not a good game move. Why are you like asking her these questions? And Lala basically says that she was asking those questions so that Taylor could hear the answers, and Taylor's like, I already know the answers. She's also not going to be honest about these kinds of questions that you're asking, which were basically things like, how closely are you working with D, and how close are you with Haley, and all these different kinds of things that Angela's obviously not just going to come out and be completely 100% honest. And now Taylor's also telling all the people up in the HOH room about it. This has caused Angela to become extremely emotional and cry. She's had several people come up into the gym to comfort her, and a lot of people on Lala's side of the house are annoyed with her by this. Kamu especially, because he feels like this is just going to hinder his chances of staying against Angela even more. I don't know. I just feel like with the mixture of this tension between Angela and Lala right now, people being kind of mad at Lala on her side of the house, Mallory and Melody questioning not only the icons, but now Drew and Barrett as well, I feel like we could potentially see quite a bit of waffling tomorrow. But this week has really been very tame on the feeds, so I'm not getting my hopes up for it. But I'm just hoping for an interesting day of feeds tomorrow, because like I said at the beginning of this video, today it really has just been questioning the Angela and Kamu situation. And I think for the most part, everyone has their mind made up. It's just trying to make the people that they want to work with agree to be on the same side as them, since a lot of them have different interests or needs for their own personal game.